do you think when you hear the words work-life balance? Does it seem like an impossible pursuit? What about work-life balance for moms? Maybe it's a myth. Or is work-life balance a worthwhile pursuit, and if we just try hard enough, we'll get it? Well, hey, I'm Alicia from Alicia Cohen Designs. Come join me now for another workshop-style video as we dive into these questions today and take a look at an alternative, season-based living, which allows us to pursue effective productivity and focus on what matters most. So grab a notebook and your favorite pen, or just perch your phone somewhere while you're doing the dishes. It's time to level up your intentional planning, productivity, and mindset skills. Let's get into the slides. Okay, here's the plan for our video. First, we are going to define work-life balance. Then we're going to talk about why work-life balance doesn't work. We're going to define season-based living. And finally, we're going to talk about why season-based living works better. So first, work-life balance. So what is work-life balance? I feel like this is a very trendy, buzzwordy kind of term. And really, if I'm 100% honest, all that work-life balance comes down to is semantics. It means different things to different people. So there's not this like one big definition of work-life balance, this big, bad, evil work-life balance definition, because to some people, they say very strongly, oh, I don't like work-life balance, that's horrible. And other people are like, yay, let me teach you how to do work-life balance, and I'm all about work-life balance, right? So you can find people coming down on either side of the fence pretty strongly, but really, it's just about how you choose to define work-life balance, what it means to you, and like I said, it's just a matter of semantics. But for the purpose of our video here today, I'll just give you a basic definition of what I think of with work-life balance. So, work-life balance is when we have our work life and our life, and we try to keep those two things in balance in a way that feels good. So, we do some work and we do some life, and we try to keep things pretty even. If you think of one of those scales, those two-sided scales that kind of look like a seesaw, and we put a little bit of stuff on one side, the other side pops up because the one side is heavier than the other side, so then we put a little bit of stuff on that other side that was popping up. Now it's come down and maybe it's leveled out, or oh no, wait, now the first side has popped back up more, so we put a little bit more on that side, right? So it's this kind of seesaw scale approach where we're quote-unquote feeding the different components of our life in order to keep them all in this balanced way so that we feel like that we are doing everything that we need to, and we are giving our time and attention to everything that we need to be or want to be. Now, we hope that in doing this, we feel good about it. But oftentimes, and this is why I think some people oppose work-life balance and that whole notion, is because this chasing of the work-life balance thing, sometimes it just seems like an impossibility or a myth, and that we're hustling so hard and trying to achieve this work-life balance, and it just is not attainable, or at least that's how it seems. And the problem is, with this definition of work-life balance that I'm proposing, the problem with it is, the reason it doesn't work is because we have these different buckets of our life. Maybe we have taking care of our home and our family and our work and ourself and maybe something other, right? And we're trying to pour into each of these buckets equally and evenly so that they're all balanced. So that if they were on some sort of giant multi-platform seesaw scale, that it would all just be balanced. Everything would be getting their equal time, their equal attention, their equal resources, and everything would be nice and balanced. But the problem with this is that it's just not real life. It's well-intentioned. It sounds really nice. It's almost kind of like a utopia kind of concept here. It's like, oh yeah, that sounds really nice. I bet that would work out really nicely. It sounds great on paper. But then when we actually try to do this, especially if we're trying to do this for too many different areas in our life, well, then we're not doing anything well because we're spreading ourselves too thin. We're not going into anything in particular depth because we can't, because we have to move on to the next one in order to keep them all balanced and all even. So I don't even really like to use work-life balance in the approach that I teach because it just doesn't really fit and it just doesn't really work in my mind. And it's not like I'm pro or anti work-life balance necessarily. I just choose something completely different that's not in the conversation of am I for or against work-life balance. I just choose something completely different, which we're going to get to in a minute here, which is season-based living. And just to note, you'll see that in some of my other videos, I talk about work-life balance. Again, not in a particularly being for or against it sort of way, but just in terms of that this is a term that resonates with people. This is a term that people look for and search for and want support with. And so I do talk about it in my videos, or I talk about strategies to try to support this notion of work-life balance. But really, I use that terminology only because it's commonplace and something that people have heard of. But at the end of the day, in the way that I define work-life balance, it's not a concept that I'm interested in at all. I don't choose, as I said, being for or against or anywhere in between when it comes to work-life balance. I just kind of put that aside and choose my own different approach, which is season-based living. So let's get into that now. So, season-based living. What is season-based living? So season-based living is referring to our own personal life season, our unique life season, and certainly the seasons of the year, winter, spring, summer, and fall, play into this, or they can. But what I'm talking about here with personal life seasons are things like, are you pregnant or not? Do you have a newborn or not? Do you have a toddler or not? Are your kids school-aged, teenagers? Are you an empty nester? Are you in the season of adding a new child to your family? Or are you a first-time mom? Are you working or not? If you are working, is it busy season or light season? Maybe you work in a school. Is it school season or summer break season? Or as a parent having school-aged kids, is it school season or summer break season? Or maybe you do homeschooling and that's a season. And then you have volunteer commitments and activities that come and go with their own seasonality to them. And then health, there can be healthy seasons or chronic health issue seasons. Maybe you needed to have some sort of surgery and now you're in recovery season, or you had an injury and you're in recovery season. So as you can see, there are so many different components and pieces in our daily lives and our day-to-day lives that can make a big difference in terms of how our overall big picture life looks and functions. And so we take a look at all of these different pieces and what's going on and what's not going on. And then based on that, we start there when it comes to what we're able to do with planning and productivity in our lives. And it's going to ebb and flow based on whatever is going on in our current personal life season. And as for why it works better, if we take a look at these two different pie charts, they both have the same 5 commitments on them, responsibilities on them: your house, yourself, your vocation or occupation, your family, and then maybe something other, just for the sake of this example. And if you see the one on the left, in that particular season for that person, her vocation or occupation was taking up 45%. It was a time where things with her vocation or occupation were much heavier, required much more of her time and attention. But then, in the one on the right, things quieted down in the vocation and occupation, and then the family, whatever's going on in her family life, was requiring much more time and attention. And this is all okay. And this all works because we have the understanding that our seasons, as I said a minute ago, they ebb and flow. And this is okay. And this is normal, and this is natural. Just in the same way that the seasons of the year are natural, the personal seasons in our lives are natural. When we fight it and we try to have this pie chart have all equal pieces of the pie, just like the bucket example before, that's when we run into trouble. But when we accept that there's this fluid pie chart going on here, that actually serves us quite well and works much better, because it takes the pressure out of it to always have the different pieces of the pie be exactly the same. And when we can really own this and accept this, I feel that a weight is lifted. We can kind of give ourselves permission to be human and have human lives, which really just naturally has seasonality to it. That song by the Byrds is popping into my head right now. The Turn, Turn, Turn song from the 1960s. Anyway, Random aside, as I'm talking about seasons here. But they do. They ebb and flow. There's a natural seasonality to just human living. And what I teach in my method, my Power Up Your Productivity method, is that we really need to start here and be crystal clear on what our current season is when it comes to planning and productivity, because if we start anywhere else, it's just not going to work so well. If you are a newborn season and toddler season, and I just moved season, and I'm recovering from birth season, well, what you're able to take on is going to look very different from my kids are in school season and I'm working part-time and volunteering on 3 different committees season. They both have commitments, but they look different, and as a result, function differently. And that's going to matter when it comes to planning effectively and being able to be effective in your productivity. And so having that awareness and starting there is going to be crucial, and also keeping tabs on the ebbing and flowing and continual changing of your own personal season so that you're informing what you will and will not say yes to and what you will and will not say no to, given what your current season is needing from you in order for things to work in a more optimal way. So if you're wanting to start to get your feet wet with this getting crystal clear on your season thing, then head on down to the description for this video. I have a link there to my Sync Your Season Primer Mini Workbook. It's a multi-page little workbook to get you reflecting and get you started on this season-based living journey for the purposes of being able to live your life in a way that feels good to you and is effective, and where you're able to focus on what matters most. So if you are intrigued by or interested in what I've been talking about and sharing about in this video today, go snag that freebie that I have for you from the description to start giving yourself a taste of this way of approaching planning and productivity. Thanks so much for spending this time with me. I am rooting for you out there. Be on the lookout for another workshop style video coming your way soon. And until then, be intentional and don't give up. I'll catch you in the next thing. Take good care.